Welcome to this week's episode of The GOAT Advisors. Let me say to you that this is a special day in my guest's life because he's going to receive a big award at the end of the episode. But before we get to all of that, I want a little build up. I want to have you get to know Tim. I want you to understand why we've chosen him as this week's GOAT Advisor. And frankly, for those of you that are just tuning in, I want you to know the premise of the podcast here. The premise of the podcast is that as a consultant myself, working in the expense reduction consulting space for businesses, I've regularly and consistently come across other consultants. I work in collaboration with those consultants. I oftentimes see the work of those consultants, but even more importantly, I get the opportunity to get feedback from the chief executives or the senior executives that they're serving about their relationship with that individual, with that company. That puts me in an interesting spot to be able to pull behind the curtain and be able to expose you to the best of the best in the advisory space, the best consultants and coaches that are out there. And I think this is particularly important, and it's the reason I'm putting Tim in front of you today, is because we all know that in the advisory world, sometimes that's an overcrowded space with click funnels and certification programs on a weekend. And I took the course from Friday night to Saturday, and now I'm a coach, but I was a barista last week. I'm a coach this week, right? And sometimes when someone has the ability in today's environment to put up a pretty slick website in an afternoon, right, that they can portray themselves as having a little more background and capabilities than they have. Tell the truth in advance a little bit, as we like to say. I'm here to tell you that I'm bringing forward to you today somebody who's a bona fide coach who is going to be able to make an incredible difference if you choose to use a coach. And I want to, before I introduce him, I just want to say this one thing. You should choose to use a coach. Pick the coach that you want. Pick them very carefully because it's a very intimate type of relationship. But Michael Jordan had a coach, right? Tom Brady, who's lighting it up right now in Florida, has a coach, right? That most anybody who's really excelled in life understands the value of a detached perspective. The hitter that says, you're dropping your elbow a little bit there, right? Someone who can not be clouded by the forest for the trees. Tim Campsall is just such a coach. I can say to you that with a full-throated recommendation that I would have no reservation whatsoever to endorse and recommend him as a coach, so much so that he's going to get the GOAT Advisor Award here, as you'll see at the end of the discussion. So Tim, if you would, let's, for the benefit of the audience, please introduce yourself and have them understand a little bit about your background, and then we'll roll up our sleeves with some questions and drill into why it would make sense for my audience, as I believe they should, to seriously consider you as their professional or business coach.
Well, thank you, Cole, for that introduction. Very incredible words that you speak of me, and very touched by that. A little bit about myself. So Tim Campsall, born and raised in Canada, moved to the US in 2005 through a work transfer. I've got a little over 28 years of experience running businesses in the corporate world, coaching, training, and mentoring employees, brands that folks probably have in their household. Raid and Off and Ziploc and Saran Wrap and Edge and Skintimate Shave Gel, Pledge, Fantastic, Scrubbing Bubbles, Sargento Cheese, Red Gold Tomatoes, all well-known household names. Not only did I lead the marketing departments in those brands, but also led the cross-functional teams and had full P&L responsibility to the owners of those various companies.
Well, that's great. Did you say Pledge? Was that one of them?
Yes, Pledge.
Okay. I have a safe that that is called a diversion safe. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
It's actually, I wouldn't have thought, it's actually a Pledge can. And they must have gotten permission because it's an absolute perfect replica of a pledge can. In fact, if you hit the top of it, pledge comes out. Seriously. But at the bottom of it, you can unscrew it, and 80% of the center is felt, right? You can put money or watches or something in it, and you can screw it on. You could set it right on your counter, right? If someone breaks into your home, who's going to go steal the pledge, right? And so when you said that, it triggered it with me. A little off topic here, but I thought it might be interesting for you to know that there are diversions, that not only did you do so well with that line item, but you created a new industry in home security and may not have even known it.
There you go. That's funny.
For the benefit of the audience, let me say that I happened upon, and of course, this is part of my due diligence in choosing Tim, but I happened upon in the same week 2 people that have meaningful businesses, executives that I trust and I hold in high regard. Both of them, by the way, I'm working in some joint venture relationship with, both of them. And in both cases, they brought up to me something my coach said, okay? And I'm like, you have a coach? And they go, yeah, Tim Campsall. He's the greatest thing, and they would start spilling out all over the conference table their warm feelings, the benefits they feel like they draw from the relationship. Because I'm always on the lookout for you, my antenna went up and I went, ooh, I better drill into this a little farther, look into Tim. And as I did, we found that lots of reasons to bring him here to you today. But the question I had for Tim is that there's a lot of directions you can go with a coaching practice, right? You could go with the Campsall coaching concept and just kind of go it alone, right? You could choose, as you have, to align yourself with ActionCoach. My understanding is that there are several competitive influences that might have been in the market space for ActionCoach. I know you now well enough to know that you didn't make the decision lightly. And I think it might be interesting to the audience to figure out what that process was like and what brought you to be Tim Campsall, the Action Coach.
Yeah. So, as you said, I could certainly have gone out and hung up my shingle and become Tim Campsall's coaching business with 28 years of experience and working on really incredible brands, businesses ranging from $1.5 million to 500 million. But I wanted to make sure that what I was bringing to my clients had proven the test of time, that it wasn't just my experiences, but it was a proven methodology and a proven process and a proven approach. And I spent about 3.5 months digging it. So once I decided I wanted to go with a franchise because that would satisfy that need that I just explained, I spent about 3.5 months looking into 3 or 4 different franchise models and did my due diligence, talked to other franchise owners, went on discovery days, which is going to their corporate office. And ultimately I picked ActionCoach. And the reason that I picked ActionCoach is I mentioned earlier the brands that I've worked on. So, they're the number 1 or 2 brands in the world. And that was very meaningful to me because I knew what that meant in terms of consumer confidence in those, in that world. And I wanted to be able to portray that same confidence in my own business. So ActionCoach is the number 1 business coaching firm in the world. We created the business coaching industry 27 years ago. There's about 1,000 of us in 80 countries around the world. Wow. And we coach about 15,000 businesses a week. We believe so strongly in what we do because we've been doing it so well for so long that we offer a guarantee of results. So when I meet with folks, the number 1 concern is, hey, coaching's expensive, right? And what I ask back is, well, if we can guarantee that your business will grow enough to pay for my fees, is it really expensive or is it actually an investment?
Well, that's great. In an earlier off-camera conversation, I'd heard about the assurances, the guarantee that you offer, and it hit me as strongly because having swam in the world of coaching and consulting with my coaching business, a lot of times you can feel like there's a roll of a dice there. And frankly, even outside of coaching and consulting, let's take advertising or other things, service providers, it's hard to get somebody who's like in the soup with you, that is perfectly aligned with you in terms of their objectives. That a lot of times, as an example, in an advertising area, they'll try to increase your spend because they're earning as a result of your spend. And so what I found interesting about Action Coach and the value prop that you were talking about was what seemed to be real congruency with your client. Could you expand on that a little bit, or swap me down if I'm misinterpreting it somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a congruency standpoint, I have a coach, and I got a coach from day one before I even officially launched my business, because how could I actually go to a business owner and say to them that you need a coach if I don't believe in what I'm selling enough to have a coach myself? And my coaches, so I mentioned earlier, we've got about 1,000 coaches in our franchise. She's within the top 20 in the world. And so I'm being coached by one of the best coaches in the world to make sure that I'm then prepared to give my clients the best.
Right. Well, thank you. You mentioned, kind of as a throwaway, that you'll sometimes hear from a client that coaching is expensive. And everyone defines expensive differently, but I can certainly see why you would say that. I can tell you, and for the audience perspective, I want them to hear this from me and not from you, that not having a coach can be extremely expensive. I'm starting to think of all the trails I've ran down, and the investment that was involved in running down those trails, that maybe if I had a thought leader or a subject matter expert or a coach or someone, that a confidant who was in my corner, might have given me the old look before you leap, Cole. Okay. Or maybe have you thought about doing it a little bit differently and considering this? And I have to tell you that I think it would cost a lot more than what coaching would have cost me. But I think the reason this whole podcast has come together is that I'm interested in bringing you as an audience, not the least expensive opportunities that are out there, because so oftentimes those are the least effective opportunities that are out there. I'm not looking to bring you the pinnacle of the most expensive that's out there either. You know what I focus on? I focus on the best value proposition, benefits, and how they match up to pricing. I know firsthand from Tim's standpoint that you definitely can, for sure, find someone that is less expensive than Tim, for sure. Okay, definitely. Okay, but they're not on today as my selection as a GOAT advisor, because in my heart of heart, I don't believe that you could find a better value proposition than what you're getting from Tim. And with that, I'd like to pose the question or ask for your comment, Tim, and that, as you mentioned, we're north of 1,000 coaches. Some of those coaches have been with Action Coach for a very long time, because Action Coach has been around for a very long time. I've heard it said that they were a founding thought leader, or maybe the initial coach organization. You can amplify that for us, but that you have really got some traction in your coaching practice. That from others that I'm hearing from, things I've read online in the last month, that you're catapulting. You may be coached by the 20th best coach in the system, but you're fast approaching. And you've broken into the top 100. Even somebody poor at math like me knows that's in the top 10% of coaches in a relatively short period of time. And I was hoping you could talk about that a little bit and share with the audience what you're accomplishing as a coach, and a little bit more about your value proposition for someone that's considering hiring a coach.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so you're right. We were founded by our founder, Brad Sugars, originally in Australia. Started with large seminars and conferences, and people came up to him and said, "Hey, would you be willing to work with us directly to help us implement these things that you are teaching?" And that's how business coaching became business coaching. And he quickly realized that he couldn't do it all on his own. There were too many business owners that needed help, and he created a franchise model 27 years ago. And to your question about, me being on the top 100, yes, incredibly blessed to have achieved that recognition in July of this year, and then have continued to move up a couple slots each month. And I attribute all of that to two things. First of all, I mentioned it earlier, I had a coach from the beginning. So the benefit of that is, like your illustration, I didn't have to make my own mistakes, right? She helps me to think through, and I learn from the mistakes that she made. The other thing is, I'm a small business owner as well. So I'm going through the same learning curves that all small business owners do. I'm making my own mistakes. I'm getting stuck in my own head, right? I'm having second thoughts and doubts and fears and anxieties just like everyone else does. And as I'm now growing, right, I'm going through those growing pains of, well, I had to hire my first employee. I'm now in looking towards hiring my first business coach because my plate's getting full, right, and I've got more demand that I'm going to be able to satisfy. So the reason I share all that is kind of back to what you were saying earlier about congruency, right? Is I'm living and experiencing what all small and medium-sized business owners experience. So I get it, right? I'm not just coaching from a textbook. I'm coaching from my own experiences and the best practices of our coaching approach. And I've got my feet on the ground and I'm living it day to day, and I'm being coached. And so when a business owner says, "Hey, Tim, you just don't understand my situation," I do, because I'm there as well, right? I'm growing my business and dealing with all the same things that my clients are.
Well, yeah, thank you for for kind of amplifying that a little bit, because I'm thinking, about my experience, and you think of superstars in the performance area. That maybe that's sales, or it might be in billing hours for a law firm, or but somebody who's a rainmaker, as it's sometimes referred. They're putting a lot of points on the board. A lot of times, the best thing you could do to kill that momentum, or the worst thing you could do to them, is to make that salesman a sales manager, or to make the attorney who's doing all those billable hours, or whoever that rainmaker is, put them in a supervisory capacity and take them out of direct production. A lot of times that's so someone who excels in business, you've obviously had meaningful success in your career. That is not necessarily, in my opinion, an indicator that they'd be an effective coach. That there are personality types and there are skill sets that are not always exactly the same as the upwardly mobile career trajectory that you outlined for us when you began. So I think the audience would be interested, whether they had the good fortune of working with you or someone on your team, or they were just simply looking for a coach, what characteristics they might look for, what characteristics that you bring to the table that you think have helped you catapult, so to speak, in the coaching ranks with ActionCoach, if you think that's a fair question.
Sure. There's three criteria that I ask my clients to think about as we're deciding together if we're going to work together. Mm-hmm. And we do decide together because I pick my clients just as much as the client should pick their coach, because I only work with business owners who I feel are going to put in the work that's needed in order for them to be successful. Okay? Because if they're not, then we're really wasting each other's time. So the three things that I ask them to look at is, first of all, do we feel like we can get to their results faster by working together than they can on their own? Second, is there a return on the investment? Because as we talked about, coaching is not free. For myself, my packages range anywhere from $329 a month for a group program up into the thousands of dollars a month, depending on what the client is looking for. So we need to make sure that the client is going to have a return on that investment, because we have that guarantee of results. And then third, and I feel most importantly, is there a personality fit? Cole, you mentioned earlier that people have different personalities. So that client, that prospect, they need to feel comfortable that I am the right personality to give them the proverbial kick in the butt that they need from time to time. That when I hold them accountable and tell them that they're giving me crap and they're making excuses, right, that they're going to take that in the right way. They're going to know that my heart is there, that I'm all about them being successful, and it's not going to bruise them from not being able to continue to make progress. So if they're able to answer those three questions, yes, then it makes sense to work together, right? Not all personalities are a fit. So if we get to the end and they say, hey, Tim, I definitely think that coaching is beneficial to me, and I definitely think there's a return on investment, but I just don't feel you're the right personality, then I'll refer them to another coach, because I care more that they're going to be able to achieve their goals and be successful than I care about that they have to work with me. I just want them to get coaching, because as you said, everybody needs a coach. Everybody will benefit from a coach, just like, the professional athlete examples that you shared. It doesn't have to be me. Figure out who's the right fit for you, and get the guidance and direction and support that you need to get over whatever challenges you're facing in your business.
Well, thank you for that. For the benefit of the audience, Tim and I had had dinner recently, and in that dinner, he wasn't fully aware that he was being vetted for the award, right? For the GOAT Advisors Award. It was a hidden agenda that I had in the dinner, but several things came out. In a more intimate setting like that, there's very definitely a servant leadership, a servant's heart. I personally find that that's very good to have when you're looking for a coach. The client first, I guess, kind of mentality was very evident with Tim, and from my vantage point, I think is critical. Many of you have heard me say before that my axiom is that you can have everything in life that you want if you first help enough other people get what they want. Well, Tim takes that axiom or that quote and has really made it his life, his coaching practice is evident with that. Clients I've talked to have said that. One of the things that you tossed out, which I wanted to latch on to, right? You said, we have programs that are whatever it was, $300 or $400 a month in a group coaching kind of concept, to something that can escalate to whatever level that is necessary for whatever frequency and time commitment that might be required for the project. What I like about that is I have seen, I bet you have seen, coaching programs that tend to be a one size fits all. And I think anytime you run into a one size fits all situation, particularly in something as intimate as coaching, you're more frequently than not going to end up in a round peg versus a square hole. And so I'd like for you to amplify your ability to morph and customize not only pricing, but the coaching methodologies in total, because a manufacturer is different than a dentist, which is different than a retailer, which may be different than a B2B service professional in another area. And so let's talk about the malleability of your practice, both in terms of pricing and in terms of service offering, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So from a service offering standpoint, right, I'm never going to know your industry as well as you, and I'm never going to know your business as well as you. And you shouldn't want me to, because that's you as the business owner, that's your expertise. What I bring is the best practices of how great companies are run. And then together we form a partnership in terms of how do we take those best practices and implement them into your business in the right way for you, and the right way for your employees, and the right way for your business model. Right? So there isn't a cookie cutter approach. However, there are best practices. So we have a model. It's called the 6 steps to building a better business. And with each of those steps, there are various approaches and best practices and things that have been shown to prove the test of time. But we don't have to go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, right? What we do together, all coaching arrangements start with an initial alignment exercise, where it's a few hours that we're spending together on top of a few hours of pre-work that you've done ahead of time. And we're aligning on the goals of your company. and what it is that you want out of the coaching relationship. From there, we then determine where do we start, right? The long-term goal of our coaching philosophy is to create a business that can run without you, the business owner. Right? What generally happens is when we've all gotten into business for ourselves, we've done so because we have a passion, or we've got an art or a craft or a trade that we really like and enjoy, and we've decided that we don't want to work for the man or the woman anymore, right? We can do it on our own. And then we go out and then we quickly realize, oh my goodness, this business owner hat that I have to wear is got 100 different things that I have no idea what I'm doing. Some of them I don't even like doing, and I'm completely overwhelmed because I just wanted to do, my art or my craft or my trade. Right? Then we say you went from being employed to being self-employed, and the only way you get paid is if you show up every day. And quickly there's this realization of, I'm working more than I ever did when I was an employee. Therefore, I'm making way less than I ever did when I was an employee. And the idea of freedom and flexibility that I thought I was going to have when I went into business for myself isn't achievable because I'm working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Okay? What we bring is a roadmap, best practices of how to get you out of the day-to-day and have you climb up the entrepreneurial ladder to first a manager, where you've got employees that can start to take over some of the day-to-day activities, and then eventually to business owner, where you've got systems and processes and procedures and marketing and sales activities and a team in place, so that you, the business owner, can be a true business owner that has a profitable business that can run without you. And so how you get there, how we get there together, is different for every single client, because some clients need to start at understanding their financials and getting what we call financial mastery, and looking at their P&L and their balance sheet every week and every month, I should say, looking at their cash flow projections every week. Some clients, they already have that foundation in place, but they need some help with developing a marketing program that can generate leads, or a sales process that can convert those leads into new clients or into new customers. Other clients have that in place, and they're just having a hard time finding and keeping great employees. So we implement our proprietary hiring process, recruiting and hiring process, called deselection, where we make the owner's time more efficient and effective by not having them have to go through every traditional step of the hiring process. Right? We do group interviews instead of one-on-one interviews to free up that owner's time. We focus on culture and values and beliefs in the interview process, so you're attracting the right people to your organization, not just somebody that's coming to work for you for a paycheck. So all of these things come together. We call it the chassis of a business. So the question I get a lot is, hey, Tim, do you work with my specific industry? Right? Well, the reality is that it doesn't matter. Right? What we teach is industry agnostic. So if you think of, chassis of cars, where, the shell of the car, there can be 3 or 4 or 5 different shells that are put on the chassis. Same thing with business, right? If you've got the chassis of your business running according to best practices, that applies regardless of what industry you're in. And like I said earlier, we coach about 15,000 businesses a week in every imaginable industry. So we know that it works for every industry.
Well, that's great. You've given me several things to think about here, but one just quick retort. The industry doesn't matter. Does the size of the business matter? How long they've been in business? The experience that the owner brings to the table? Does someone who's less experienced need a coach? Someone like me who's been self-employed all their life, are they less interested in or less benefit by having a coach? I'll tell you on that one, probably not. Okay, but in terms of the people that are listening, who benefits best from a coach, and who can you help the most based on all the criteria that I've mentioned or others I've not thought to bring up?
Sure. The person who benefits the most is the person who doesn't feel like they know it all. The person who understands and appreciates the value of coaching in sports and sees that there's a connection to that in their business. The person who is humble enough to say, you know what, I don't know it all. I think I have reached my own glass ceiling, or, right, I'm doing incredibly well and I just want to take things to the next level, or I want to transition from me being the leader to my leadership team, right? And so there are 1,000 different ways that we can help people. And it's, again, specific to whatever the specific challenge is that they're facing. In terms of size of business, or whether they're startup or they've been around forever, it's the mindset that is more important than the size of the business or the years of experience. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got coaching programs, right, for all different sizes of business, all different budgets of businesses. And we see clients often upgrade. So, they may start at the $300 program, right, and get the foundation and the fundamentals in place, and the discipline and the structure of working on their business instead of in the business. And as they get that momentum, they then upgrade to a weekly program instead of a monthly program, or a one-on-one program instead of a group program. And the difference really between those is how quickly you get results. So as you can imagine, right, if we're meeting weekly, then you're doing your work weekly, versus if we're meeting monthly, we all have other priorities. And so generally speaking, we leave things to the last minute. So if we're only meeting once a month, then you're only doing your homework once a month. And so the results come slower than if you're doing your homework every week.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm really glad to see that you're adopting some growth in your own business, considering bringing on. I'm sure you're going to be very careful about who you do attract to your business, because I know the premium that your time has been under. And I tell you, from my standpoint, if I'm looking for a professional service provider, and I said, hey, can I'd like to schedule an appointment with you, and they go, any day next week, anytime you want, I'm available. That might be a red flag. And so the scarcity that you'll see in Tim's calendar, I think in this case, is probably an advantage. When you talked about your aggressive movement in the rankings with ActionCoach, I thought it was kind of funny. I broke in to the top 100 in July, and I'm picking up a few seats every time. Now I'm at 71 or whatever you said. And I'm like, it's almost like the joke for me was like, yeah, but who's counting, right? Like, what are your goals? Okay, I know when we had dinner, a big part of your goal was you measured your success by the success of those that you had the privilege of coaching. But in terms of Tim Campsall's personal aspirations with the business, what are they, and have they changed since you launched the business? And sometimes when you get into something, right, you go as far as you can see, and then when your vantage point changes, and you can see farther. So please, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us.
Yeah. So two different answers to that, and this is a general trend, is most business owners over project their year one, and then significantly under project following years. And I'm no different. My year one was very poor, based on what I had come from in my past life. And I don't mind sharing. My first year of this business, I grossed $31,000, and my salary prior to owning my own business was in the few $100,000 a year. And so that was an incredibly frustrating, challenging first year journey. And quite frankly, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. If I didn't have a coach, I wouldn't be where I am today, because there were multiple days that I thought, hey, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to make it. And the consistent coaching was, Tim, you're doing all the right activities, so keep it up. And if you've ever read the book Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt, right, he talks about the idea of you have to constantly be prospecting. And what I didn't know at the time is I was planting seeds that were taking time to sprout. All I saw was I was doing a whole bunch of stuff and nothing seemed to be working. So then fast forward, this year, during COVID, which you would think would be, the worst time to start to see the seed sprouting, I jumped into the top 100. And now as you mentioned, I'm in the 70s. So my goal, what went from being, really high in year one to then getting incredibly humbled and having a very, a much modest goal in year two, to now me upping my year two goal twice. And so my goal was top 100 by the end of the year. Originally, I hit that in July. So then my goal was top 50 by the end of the year. And I just recalibrated that to top 50 next month.
Oh, that's great. Would you let me know, you get back to me on how you do with that top 50?
I will do.
I think all of us, I might put that out to all of you, like a separate email or something. We can kind of cheer them on, right? And root for Tim's success. We've talked about what you're doing in your own coaching practice. Let's take a broader view now and say coaching in general. There was a time when if someone would have said, I have a business coach, that would have seemed foreign. Okay. Then coaching entered the mix, but it was fringe. Okay. My take, but I'm more interested in your take, is it's becoming more mainstream, and maybe it's very mainstream at this point. Maybe it's just mainstream to the top producers. And if you're at the top of your game, you might go, oh, everybody I know has a coach. And if you're not, you might go, nobody I know has a coach. And maybe you want to examine that. Okay. But you could share with us what your feeling is about the coaching industry and where it sits now, briefly where it's come from, and maybe not so as briefly where you see it going, what the projection is as far as coaching.
Yeah. So absolutely. So you're right. There are, depending on who you are and the experiences you've had, I bump into people who have no idea what coaching is, to people who, like you said, right, everybody they know has coaching. A famous quote from Jim Rohn, right, you'll become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when you surround yourself by great people, when you surround yourself by people who are excelling, or coaches or advisors, right, you then become the average of those people. So I bump into a lot of people who are extremely skeptical about coaching because they've had some bad experiences. And so that's where the idea of, doing your homework, make sure that you're getting reviews from, clients that the coach you're interviewing has worked with. Get that feedback, make sure you're making the best decision for you, make sure there's a personality fit. Two, I have met a number of folks who don't even know what a coach is, right? Or they may have loosely heard about business coaching, but they've never had any experience, directly, or any of their circle hasn't had experiences with it. So I believe that coaching is going to become more mainstream. Just like every industry, there are different types of coaches. So you want to do your homework. You want to make sure that you're getting somebody who is going to give you what you need in your business. Not everyone is looking at revenue or profit growth. Like some of my clients are looking at systems, right? Becoming more efficient and effective. Some clients are just looking for being able to find and attract a great team. So when we define, success, it's really how the client defines success, right? Ultimately, I'm there to ensure that there's an ROI on the investment that they're making in me, but they define what investment means to them. So I think going forward, Cole, there's going to be more of a mainstream embracing of coaching, similar to things like, well, everybody needs an accountant. Not everybody has one, but it's generally accepted that, you should probably have an accountant for your business. And right. Coaching is going to become that in years that we're not there today. We've got a long way to go to get there. And I think there's also going to be some weeding out of the industry, right? From my marketing background, I talk about the idea of good, better, best, right? So there are a lot of coaches who have just hung up their shingle, right? They've got good working experience. They've climbed the corporate ladder, like you mentioned, right? And they've decided, hey, I'm going to use this experience and go out and be a coach. But they haven't taken the steps needed to learn how to coach, because learning how to be successful in a business is very different than learning how to coach, as you alluded to, right? So the better model then is there's a number of different coaching programs that are available, right? You can get certified to be a coach, and like you said, there's some weekend versions of that, and there are multiple month versions of that. So you want to do your homework again and make sure that you understand what the certification process is, because the certification process is all about how to be a good coach, right? And then I'm probably a little biased, but I believe that the franchise model is the best because there's the history, right? So if you go out and you Google, Action Coach as an example, you're not going to find a lot of negative PR about people not getting results, right? There's always going to be some negativity, but that's one thing I did when I was vetting, where I want what franchise model I wanted to go with, is I looked out to see what the chatter was out in the social world. So 27 years of helping clients deliver great results was enough for me to decide that it was the right fit for me. But you as a client or a prospect, if you're looking at coaching, you need to make the decision that's right for you. Only you can decide. It's got to feel right to you.
Well, I think that's insightful. No question I've asked Tim today was provided to him in advance of the interview. Obviously, we went spontaneity, but also I wanted to illustrate for you. Right? Didn't you just get just now an interview that either you could take from and use with another coach, or maybe even following my recommendation with the GOAT advisor? Didn't you already get a pretty substantive interview with Tim, if you were considering him, or anyone that he affiliates himself with as a coach? They were not given to him in advance. They're pointed questions. And what did we learn? Okay, you saw the command that Tim has of the process. You saw a good listener. When I'm talking, he's not interjecting, right? He understands what's the old ratio, the number of ears to about 2 to 1, ears to mouth. Tim, I can tell you, is a good listener. He also had to put up with a rapid fire series of questions with me in a off-camera private dinner, again, where he didn't know that he was being considered for the award, right? And he handled those as artfully as the questions that you have heard today. Don't you feel the empathy and compassion that he would have? One of the challenges I think you have with accomplished people is that their ego bleeds over into the coaching arrangement. That's a problem, okay? Because the job of a coach, as I see it, I interact with a lot of them in our consulting space, is to elevate or to pedestal or to increase the client, okay? And you can't do that if there's competing egos in a room. You can see in the interview here, there's none of that. One of the other things you're going to look for as far as a coach is concerned is case studies. Well, whatever credibility I have with you, I have 2 people that I know very well that gave me chapter and verse, very heavy endorsements and recommendations of Tim citing to me confidential information that would be considered valuable, viable case study. So you have that. What else are you looking for? You're looking for confidence. Okay. Well, what's more confident than saying any investment that you make in me, I'll assure you in writing that you get a return on your investment, or I'll continue to work for free until I get you a favorable return on investment. That's confidence. Okay. It's not give me some money and let's roll the dice and see what happens, right? In other words, Tim and other action coaches around the country find themselves in the boat with you, so to speak, rowing in a congruent manner to get you in a common destination. I think that's important. Experience is important. Well, he's aligned himself with an organization that was a founding thought leader in the coaching space. I've heard the original coaching company as they launched in Australia, but under any circumstances, they're approaching 3 decades of smoothing out the processes, providing for Tim a good track to run on. I would be willing to say, Tim's too humble to say this, but I would be willing to say there's probably a big disparity in the actual action coaches themselves and how well they assimilate the action coach information and are able to deliver that to their clients. I think it'd be naive to think that that wasn't the case. So when you look at Tim's past background and his past successes in dealing with top brands, names that you all recognize, you have to see instantly the opportunity that provides to transfer that background and skills and that opportunity to be able to then assimilate all of that, blend it with Action Coach, and make it available to you. So with that said, before I give you your GOAT trophy, are there any parting thoughts or comments that you'd like to share for the audience on topic of anything we've talked about today, or frankly off topic, if you feel like it would be valuable for them to hear from you?
Sure, thanks. Making a decision on coaching is a huge decision, and it's not something we've talked about throughout this interview. It's not something you should take lightly. It's not something that you should go in blindly. And so to help facilitate that decision making, I offer a 2-hour complimentary coaching session.
2 hours.
2 hours.
Wow.
Where we're going to dig in deep into your business. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions to really understand, right, where your business is at today, where you want to take it, some of the challenges that you may be facing. I'm going to share strategies on how to get there. We're actually going to roll up our sleeves and use 2 of our key foundational tools to show you hands-on what coaching looks like. At the end of it, I will ask you to make a decision of whether coaching is right for you. And if it's not, that's perfectly okay. What I want is to make sure that you're able to address those challenges. So you're going to walk away with a few strategies that you can apply to your business right away, whether you decide to move forward into coaching or not. And that's my thank you for your time. 2 hours is a lot of time for a busy business owner to give up. And so I want to make sure that it's completely valuable for you, that you don't walk away feeling like that was a waste of time. So you're definitely going to benefit from that regardless of what decision that you make.
Well, that's very generous of you, Tim. And the way you couch everything is that 2 hours is a very big commitment on the part of the business owner. But I would turn that around and say, it's also a big commitment on your part, because when you consider what you're able to bill your time for, okay, that you're making an investment no less than writing a check to that business. Obviously, it's in hopes that it's leverageable into a long-term, mutually beneficial professional relationship. But even in the absence of that, that they end up with something exceedingly valuable. And I think that's incredibly powerful. Let me say to you that it's my idea, we work in the consulting space also in a meaningful way, that the best way, Tim, to show somebody that you can help them is by actually helping them. Okay. Right. And in 2 hours with you, they're evaluating if you can help them while you are helping them. Okay. And so, well, if this little taste was able to give me these nuggets that I can immediately see can be implemented in my business, what would a whole helping be worth? And so thank you very much for your time. Jim Rohn, he's one of my mentors. I can't believe you mentioned him, right? He's most famously known as the person that discovered and a mentor for whom? Anthony Robbins. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Look it up. Anthony Robbins, at 17 years old, was selling Jim Rohn seminars, and Anthony Robbins gives all of the credit to his success as being a coach and a world celebrity, or however we want to think of him, right? He gives all of that credit to Jim Rohn. And Jim says that you are impacted by what, the 5 people that you spend your time around. He doesn't use the word impacted. He said what? You're what?
You'll become the average of.
You'll become the average of the top 5 people that you spend your time around. I would suggest that you start spending your time around GOATs. Right now, all of you know the acronym for GOATs, right? Greatest of all time. So many of you have seen this other episodes, and you know that when I was looking for the GOAT trophy, I wanted something of significance for those that have achieved what will be, for many of them, the pinnacle of their career. And so the trophy company came back and they go, here's a GOAT trophy. And I went, this is not nearly ugly enough. Give me an uglier trophy, right? So they sent me a second trophy. They went back and they uglied it up more, and they gave me another trophy. And I said, we just need something more hideous. Send me a hideous trophy. And this is what they have. Is this the ugliest thing you have ever seen in your life? This, Tim, is your GOAT Advisors trophy. Now, I can tell you, other recipients of this trophy have said, you know, I looked up online and I found a dozen athletes that had sold on eBay their Super Bowl rings. And then I Googled to see how many had sold their GOAT Advisor trophy. None. So that should give all of you some insight as to the power of the trophy that Tim is about to receive. He's an accomplished executive before becoming a coach. He's an accomplished coach inside of ActionCoach, but there is nothing that Tim is going to achieve. He's a relatively young man still in the rest of his career that will usurp the GOAT. Tim, I would go so far as to say, years from now, when you're in the hospital bed, about to take your last breath, tubes from everywhere, that you'll be hanging on white-knuckled to the GOAT and telling your great-grandkids about this very meeting that you had where you were honored by being selected, and we're being a little playful, but carefully selected in all honesty, to be a GOAT recipient for the greatest of all time as an advisor. So thanks very much for your participation. You're probably speechless. I can't imagine you not being. But if there's any final thoughts that you'd have about being the recipient of the prestigious award, more valuable, Herschel Walker would trade his Heisman Trophy for this in a heartbeat, Tim. But he doesn't have one of these. You do. Any final parting thoughts?
I am beyond words. I have a tear rolling down my eye. I'm laughing so hard. That is beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, on a more serious note, Cole, I do appreciate all of the kind words that you said during this interview. It's an honor to accept this award, and I appreciate you acknowledging me in the way that you have. Thank you.
Well, it's well deserved. Anybody who's looking for a coach, you would be well served to have that initial discussion with Tim. It's not an onboarding discussion, right? It's an alignment discussion. You heard him. Okay, you're going to explore if there's a potential fit. If there's a fit, move forward. If he has space to accept you, okay? If it's not a fit, I guarantee you, as I know Tim, he's going to give you insightful suggestions as to where you would go to find that perfect fit. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go to Google and go, find me a business coach? 8 to 80, blind, crippled, and crazy, 17 million things are going to pop up. Take advantage of the resource that we're making available to you. You're the average of the sum of the 5 people you spend time around, and I'm inviting you to have an opportunity to have a free 2-hour conversation with a GOAT. Now, someone who's the greatest of all time award winner in any business category that says, I'll give you 2 hours of my time complimentary. Why in the world would you not take it? So you're going to see the contact information from Tim available here. I strongly urge you to reach out to Tim and take advantage of it. Thanks so much for your time and attention. Tim, thank you for joining us, and enjoy all the days of your life, your GOAT Advisory Trophy.
Thank you so much, Cole.